Chapter 43. Before. The 7th level.
Attention, citizens. You have failed to apprehend Crinan Jameso, and he has arrived at the 7th level and risen to the 11th percentile. It has never been more imperative that this demon be captured, for if he is successful in what he aims to achieve, you will all be in great peril. I now implore all citizens to pursue Crinan Jameso to the 7th level, regardless of ability. He must be stopped, and whoever is able to apprehend him will receive an award of 10,000 shards. I'm opening portals in all key areas on all levels for...
The transmission suddenly stopped, and Crinan watched as blue portals began to pepper the landscape all around him. The 7th level was dark, and the land was composed of black ebony rock. No vegetation grew, and the ground on which Crinan stood was flat, though he saw shadowy mountains looming in the background. "This doesn't look good," Crinan growled as he watched players begin to file out of the portals. A seemingly endless stream of them began to crowd into the landscape, and Crinan took a step back, bumping into Karsten and the others they had saved who had apparently been waiting for them.
"Yeah, partner," Karsten sighed. "I don't know how you reckon you're gonna get out of this one."
"We will,"
Malenka replied.
"We won't give up no matter how many of them come out of that portal. We have to fight, and we will win."
"Look at them, though," Crinan argued. "They're still coming. There's so many of them." "They are nothing," Eon hissed as he stepped forward. "They could not hope to stand against me."
"Against us,"
Malenka corrected him.
"You're not the only one here."
Eon turned his head and snorted at Malenka. "Child, I am all that will ever be," Eon corrected her. "None can stand against me. I will crumble the seat of the Empire with my own hands. A bright flash of light suddenly filled the sky, cutting off Eon and forcing everyone to shield their eyes with their hands. A loud static sound briefly filled the air, and Crinan, even through his shielded eyes, saw that the light was shifting and changing colors like a video at nighttime. Curiously, Crinan peeked over his hands, and his eyes grew wide at what he saw. An image floated in the sky. It looked like a movie or a television program, but it was just a close-up of a wooden desk in what looked like an office. Everyone in the 7th level stared at the image, curious what it was. But then after a few moments, a figure stepped into view and seated himself behind the desk. The elf was handsome, clean-shaven, and had a well-groomed head of blue hair that was silvering at his temples. He was initially silent as he slowly lifted his hands and straightened the tie that disappeared into the blue vest that he wore over his collared shirt. He cleared his throat, chewing on his tongue for a moment before a warm smile formed on his face. His teeth were among the brightest Crinan had ever seen. Folding his hands together in front of him, he sat up straight and stared directly at all who watched. His nostrils briefly flared, and his eye twitched ever so slightly. Everyone in the hells was silent. The players who stepped out of their portals looked up in curiosity at the strange image before them. The elf simply sat silently, as if he were waiting for a cue. Finally, with a clear, ancient, accented voice that Crinan recognized, he spoke. "Hello, my fellow citizens," Sage said with a tone that demanded attention. "I do find myself humbled greatly by this privilege to speak with you today. My name is Saginius Lynx, founder of the Lifelinks Corporation and former president of the Great Republic of Isla Axi. I come before you today not as a leader, but as an equal. As a suffering servant whose greatest desire is to see the spark of life shine once again in all of your eyes. Let none of you mishear my words, for I do not speak only to the dead. I speak to all who would hear, even those of you who have perhaps ignorantly delivered an immeasurable amount of pain unto your fellow Duranians." Crinan stared up at Sage completely in awe. The elf's voice was captivating. His appearance and posture was much more than Krynen expected. He carried himself in a way that pulled Krynen in and wouldn't allow him to break free. He had to listen. For the first time in nearly 1,000 years, I am able to rejoice in the fact that I can sit here with you and discuss something that affects us all in one way or another. You see, my friends, no matter which side you fight for in this final battle that has been thrust upon you all, none of you will wake up tomorrow the same. I have had the absolute pleasure of equalizing the playing field, if you will. I have personally taken it upon myself to make certain that you all are on level ground. You may be asking yourself why I would ever do such a thing. I should say that I do not believe you are evil, O citizens of Govia. I am not punishing you. And on that note, I did this because I want everyone to understand that those of us who have died are not deserving of punishment. And even if we were, then those of us who still live are not the ones responsible for dealing out such punishment. Death is our punishment, as it is also our reward, a conclusion of life, a ceasing of sensation and experience and learning, but also rest, and perhaps a new adventure for us all. Or so that was what the universe had in mind. A millennium ago I changed that because I was afraid. I did not do it for money, I had plenty. I did not do it for fame, for such a thing grows boring. No, I sought to end the finality of life once and for all because I lost the person who was most dear to me. I altered the natural course of life because my wife Amanda was taken from me, and I didn't want anyone else to feel that pain again. Goodbye is very difficult to say, and in some circumstances even harder to accept. I wanted everyone to have the opportunity to commune with those they loved for all of eternity, and so I created the Afterscape. Sage paused for a moment to collect himself and then continued. I was a fool, Sage said. When the church won the war, everything that I hadn't lost was taken from me. My assets were seized, my life's work was twisted into hideous perversions of their original forms. The Afterscape, once a utopia where any could forge their own eternities, was transformed into the hells, and I have carried the blame with me for centuries. My friends, my desire today was to come before you to apologize for having failed you. You have endured many lifetimes of torment and pain because I could not handle my own. I can never make amends for this, but here I sit, doing everything in my limited power to at least make it end for you. I have no expectation of forgiveness, but I do ask that you take to heart what I have said. Krynen looked over at Eon, who was snarling at the image of Sage. His hands were aflame, and he trembled with fury. There was clearly more to their relationship than Krynen was aware of. The first step in the end of your torment is for Krynen Jameso to escape, for he holds the key to all of our salvation. Govia is opening portals all over the hells as we speak. These portals will lead you to the seventh hell. I implore you, friends, take your exhumed lives and strength and go to the seventh level that you may aid Krynen in what may be one of the most important events in the history of Duran. Your lives are at stake, as are the futures of your descendants and all who dwell on Duran. My friends, I beg of you, do not tarry and do not fear. Together as a people, we can all create a better tomorrow for those that will come after us. Krynen glanced at Malinka, who stared up at Sage. She took a deep breath, her shoulders raised and lowered as her lungs filled with air, and then she reached down and took hold of the axes hanging from her hips. With a ferocious look, she pulled the weapons free. My time with you all is quickly running out, Sage continued. Together, You are all powerful. You can resist those who have hurt you for so long. You can fight, and you can win. Get to the portals, join Crine and Jameso in the 7th level, and show everyone who has ever lived that you will not bow down. Show them that you are strong, you are able, and in spite of your own deaths and torment, you are still here. Sage closed his eyes and nodded his head gently before unfolding his hands and placing them face down on his desk. Thank you, my friends, for hearing me once again. For those of you who escaped today, I will see you soon. For those of you who remain in the hells, I am proud of you. Sage pushed himself up, and without another word, he walked away, and the video faded out of view.
By the brothers,
Crinan gasped as he watched what had to have been thousands of people pouring through the open portals all around him. They carried their weapons, loaded their guns, a few of their hands ignited with magical powers. They were all very obviously preparing for combat in their own way. Crinan heard shouting and the sounds of combat as the people flooding through the portals tried to find their sides. Guns discharged and swords clanged against the metal of armor. The unfortunate cried out as they fell to the chaos that had erupted around them. Crinan watched the former prisoners roar with a vigor that was renewed by Sage's appearance. Even though they were outnumbered, they clashed against the players, fighting viciously to gain the upper hand.
What do we do?
Crinan asked. He looked around nervously for a way out or something from Sage.
We're here. How do we escape now?
I am certain we will know when we see it. Eon spat with a frown. He stepped forward toward the fighting, not bothering to look at Crinan.
These things, they take time. All we have to do is stay on our feet until the way home presents itself.
Crinan glanced at Eon, but didn't let his gaze linger. The sight of him scared Crinan. His power was immense, and Crinan didn't want to be responsible for Eon going back to Duran. It was becoming increasingly apparent, however, that Crinan would not be returning without him.
Put your trust in me, my young friend, Eon said as he continued forward. I will deliver you, even if I am forced to carry you.
Great, Crinan replied with a sigh. However, he found his fingers interlocked with Malinka's, and he looked over at her.
Almost done,
she said as the two walked forward. There was a look of what Crinan thought could have been disappointment on her face. He looked around at the others, stopped to let them pass, and then turned to Malinka.
Maybe we should just stay here,
Crinan said. Malinka snorted in response and then looked to the battle that was growing ahead of them.
Crinan and Malinka? Finding love and living happily ever after in the hells?
Malinka asked.
It's cute, but I'm ready to go home.
Yeah, I get that.
Crinan let go of her hand and reached up to stroke her cheek.
Well, then I guess I have no choice but to go with you then.
Good,
Malinka said. Crinan smiled thinly, and then they turned back toward the battle.
Our forces are massing. The two sides are separating. This is going to be rough,
Crinan said as he watched the two armies split.
Bring it on.
This was going to be his last fight in the hells, and he was eager for it to be over. His army ran toward him in a large mass, while the player army pulled back.
Time to be your father,
Malinka said, patting him on the shoulder.
They're all here for you after all.
Well, fuck,
Crinan replied.